background. And so I just wanted to start at the beginning, like the root of everything. So I looked at the papers where they claimed to, isolate an infectious particle. But it turned out that they weren't actually doing science and they weren't actually discovering anything. They were just kind of using this laboratory simulation to create particles that they could, point at and declare it as such and such, but they could just create these things at will by setting up certain experimental conditions in the laboratory. And researchers have done it without actually a biological sample. Like they didn't take some snot from a sick person and they still showed the same kind of particles, or they show the same kind of particles coming from different organs that have nothing to do with that disease. Like there's a paper that shows in kidney biopsies from people with kidney disease that they essentially had particles that had the famous corona spikes, except obviously these people had nothing to do with any kind of infectious illness. They were, had chronic renal failure. So when I found out this misunderstanding, I wanted to see, is this just in the current situation in 2020, or does this cover other infectious epidemics and pandemics in history? And, I went on kind of a wild goose chase, and that's probably where you saw me buried in paperwork because for example, with the corona particles, I traced back to the original paper that alleged to discover the corona. And it was in the 1960s. It was in a veterinary journal. I had to find someone whose relative was a librarian to get me a copy of this paper. But I found that essentially it was all a sham. They never really discovered something in nature. And I've looked, of course, at many other examples of this and many other famous and scary diseases. And, I think the first time, though, a significant number of folks really caught on to this fraud was in the era of AIDS. And so some of those folks, like specifically Nancy Turner Banks, who's another physician, who really paved the way, like she was an important influence in her writing and teaching in helping me see there were other people too, I don't want to discount Duesberg and even some people I have personal relationships with, like Tom DiFerdinando. But there has been an awareness, and of course it's now, this has been really exposed. So, the team of us that are all represented in this conference, and I'm talking about Mark and Sam Bailey, of course, Tom Cowan, Amanda Vollmer, and, many others that I can't name everyone. But collectively, we've looked, at just about every kind of infectious illness you could imagine. And we found the same exact thing, that they never actually found these particles in nature, that they call an infectious particle, the V word. It's just, the whole thing is a sham, but you can see why it's perpetuated because it's a tool of manipulation. It's vaccines are the second, now they're the most lucrative. These immune injections that are required for entry to school and such, they were the second biggest revenue generator in the medical complex behind, cancer medicine. And now with the newer injections, right, they've become the top selling pharmaceuticals of all time.